Coming to you live from Chicago today. The Morningstar Conference kicks off tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Next year, maybe some of you guys can join me. It's a great conference. All right, well, we're a minute past, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to our advisor development, Ready to Double. If you've been joining us for all the rest of the seasons, you know the one thing that I say is that change is hard and everything is hard until it's easy. So you just have to get started, and it's all about progress over perfection. We've covered a lot of topics, so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with our quick disclosures on the next page here, and this is just telling you that we're not guaranteeing that you're going to double by working through the program, and that you have to put in the hard work. On the next slide, this covers our whole agenda of what we've covered so far. If you've missed any of the previous sections, please go back into our YouTube channel, subscribe, watch, replay. I know I talk really fast, so several people have said I have to go back and watch it anyway. So all of the links are here for you. You can also just go to our channel and follow us. Today, we're going to focus on on personal branding, and these are the 4 categories that we're going to spend most of our time talking about. So, a couple of really important quotes for you. You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of advisors make in the industry. They're preparing to get ready to do something. And they get stuck in this phase of getting ready. If you're always getting ready and you never get out and go and do, then you're not going to be able to make progress. So that progress over perfection has got to be a mantra, and you've got to start doing. It's never going to be perfect your first go. The second quote here is, your brand is not what you sell, it's the experience that you deliver. And we've heard this over and over, and everybody talks about it's how you make people feel and not what you say and all of those things. But it really is about experience. When you think about your favorite dining, yes, you want good food, but isn't that an experience when you eat, and the way that it's plattered on and the service that you get? And it's all of those things. All of that is experience. And anything that you do, it's more about that experience than the thing. And then the last quote there is Jeff Bezos, right? So he's saying your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So there's 4 areas that we're going to talk about in today's session around personal branding. First is first impressions, and we're going to talk about what all that includes. It's more than you might just think, but you never get a second chance to make that first impression. And you have to be intentional about who you are trying to be and have that personal brand. Then we're going to spend some time on authority. How do you position yourself as the trusted expert? And what if you aren't quite the expert yet? How can you possibly borrow expertise from others on your team? And how do you ensure that you are moving forward to grow in your authority lane? Then we have to talk about content, and how you would build it and how you provide that. And then finally, the value proof, how people see you. So let's go ahead and get started in that first session here on personal branding first impressions. So there are a couple of formulas up here. I definitely am a little math-minded, and I'm definitely very analytical. So I'm thinking about, okay, what is that formula? So what is a first impression? First impression is your professional appearance. It's also your energy, and it's also the way you communicate. All 3 of those together are how you get judged on that first impression. And what if you're just missing one piece of those 3? So if you've got the polished presence, you've got a good communication, but you have no energy, then you get respect, but you don't connect with the person. What if you have the professional presence and you got a lot of good energy, but you're not a good communicator? Well, then you're just really likable, but you have no credibility. And how about if you have the positive energy and you're a great communicator, but you don't have any professional presence? Well, then you have the connection, but you lack that authority, because it's the power of all of these together that really set you apart and elevate you. So your personal brand is going to be made up of a little bit different. That's going to be your reputation, how consistent you are, the value you provide over time. So we want to think about first impressions as a piece of your brand, but brand is so much more than that. And I've got a little bit more to talk about here. So when people are consistently experiencing you, that's when your growing in your brand. So let's talk about your presence professionally. So sometimes the way that you dress for situations matter, but also, are you consistent in the way that you're showing up? So there are actual personal branding experts out there that will help you create your own brand professionally in how you dress and look. It could be a color pattern. It could be, have you ever seen people that are constantly wearing crazy things? That's part of their brand. They get known for that. Maybe the ladies that wear the crazy colored glasses or fun hats or wacky socks, right? So have something that's uniquely and distinctly you, but you need to make sure that it actually jives with you and it's who you are. In addition to what you're wearing and how you present yourself and hair, makeup, accessories, all of that, you also need to worry about your posture, your body language, personal grooming, right? Like some things that might seem really basic, but I'm not kidding. I've definitely seen where it just, if somebody looks kind of grungy, you're going to be put off a little. So you don't want to forget to shower after a workout and come to a meeting stinky, right? Like some of these seem like basic things that we shouldn't talk about, but I've seen it in real life. So all of the way that you present yourself is really important. Your appearance is going to shape perceptions before you even speak a word. Now let's talk about your speaking. So the communicating with confidence. You've got to speak clearly. They really tout speaking at a moderate pace. Now you all know that I struggle with this. I talk fast, but I use it to my advantage because there are folks that appreciate that. I get a lot of compliments in the advisory space because we tend to think a little bit faster, so we catch on a little bit faster. But when I'm talking to a client, the only time I talk fast is when I know that they can't really follow what I'm saying and I'm doing a little bit of jargon speak just to show that I know what I'm talking about, and then I immediately come back onto their level, no jargon, speaking much calmer and slower and with them. Making eye contact and active listening. This is probably another area that a lot of advisors fail, is that you're so worried about proving your worth and showing all the value that you have to offer that you're not really listening. Or you're just silently waiting for your turn to answer back, or you haven't answered too fast. So, we talked about in the last session and asking good questions and digging deeper. That's part of active listening. You really want to try to avoid interrupting others. That's part of the confidence and communication as well. Humility creates a lot of credibility and trust more so than anything. So, also, what you want to think about when you're interacting with folks is being consistent and authentic. Authentic might be a little bit overused right now in the world because everyone's talking about be your authentic self, so on and so forth. What I think of when I think of authentic is being genuine, being real, right? I'm not going to pretend to be somebody that I'm not just to fit in, right? I'm not going to go to a baseball game tonight and act like I know everything about baseball. It won't work. They're going to talk about things that I don't know about. So I'll be authentic to myself and be a non-sportsy kind of person. But when you're thinking about your consistency, are your actions matching your values and your promises? Do you know what your values are? Have you gone through the exercise to identify your values? Are you being true to your values? Are you testing those? Working on yourself in those areas all comes together at the bigger picture in the puzzle. And that's what helps you be consistent. If you have your compass and your true north is identified, then you're going to have that consistency. It's going to build your personal brand and it's going to help you connect with people. That leads us to positive attitude. So, being approachable, being respectful, being enthusiastic, being a solutions finder rather than a problems pointer outer, positive energy is contagious and it helps other people enjoy being around you. When you have that positive attitude, it is like a magnet and people will come to you. So, if you're not naturally disposed, you might have to practice. If I sometimes get really focused, I have that resting face that maybe doesn't look so pleasant and that maybe can scare some people off because that's my really deep concentrating face. So I have to know that about myself and I have to relax and make sure that I'm trying to be more approachable so that I'm not turning people away. Because in my heart, I would never have that kind of perception. But if my body language is speaking wrong, then it's going to turn people off. So you have to build your expertise and share it. So a big part of this is continuing to develop your skills and your knowledge. So where are you contributing ideas and insight and information? Where are you practicing speaking? We all get to do that when we're doing our discovery meetings and our strategy meetings and our annual review meetings. But beyond that, are you getting a chance to practice to people? Are you going to networking? Are you doing any video content, which we're going to talk about later today? But having that and sharing that is a big part. And then lastly, here is cultivating meaningful relationships. You have to have genuine interest in others and connect with them. Follow up after meetings or introductions. Offer help and support, even if you can't become the advisor, even if you can't do business with them. If you can offer some kind of benefit, there's something magical when you're a giver that in return people want to reciprocate. That's not why we give, but it is a nice little after fact. So that's a big piece of it. Let's move up forward now into talking about um, authority. So when we're thinking about authority, there is the little formula here. And don't worry, I summarized all these formulas on the last page so you can see where there's overlap between these different areas. But authority is equal to your expertise plus your communication plus results and contribution, right? So there's many pieces to this, and all of them have to be there so that you are delivering value while you're building trust and you're making a difference. So people are most likely to view you when you know your subject matter, when you explain it clearly, when you consistently deliver results and you help. So demonstrating your expertise, you have to first develop a deep knowledge in your field. So what are you doing to stay current in all the trends and best practices? How are you staying up to date? How are you staying informed? And then how are you sharing those insights? People trust those who are consistently providing value. So if you're not staying in the know, then you're not continually learning, you're stagnating, right? So that idea of being growth minded is really important. So think about instead of just participating in a meeting, how can you contribute, right? And so it might even fall outside of our lane. It might not even be specifically in your subject matter expert, but being able to contribute any meaningful way. So think about a chamber of commerce. It takes a lot of skills to make a program run. Well, if you're naturally a good organizer or a good networker or whatever your talent and skill set is, it might not have anything to do with your advisory and planning business, but you step in and you solve something that helps grow your authority because you were able to take charge, you were able to show leadership. So there are ways that you can demonstrate authority even outside of your specific expertise. We already talked about communication in our last section, but in authority, communication is just as important. You have to speak concisely, you have to avoid jargon. Now, in my role, sometimes I need to have the jargon talk because I'm selling advisors and they need to know that I know what I'm talking about in portfolio management and that they need to know these different things. So I will do it just as much as that is needed. But with clients, it's really unnecessary. It's never in your best interest to talk over people's heads. It is always in your best interest to bring it down a notch so that everyone understands. And I'm also never shy to ask, what does that mean? I mean, I'm playing in an insurance world, right? Sequin Planning is owned by an IMO. I had to learn a lot about insurance. All of these acronyms, what's an IMO? What's an FMO? Right? And I could have just kept it quiet. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to communicate. I'm going to have confidence in what I know, and I'm going to learn about other areas. It builds credibility as well that you're not faking it. So make sure that you're providing that as well. And also, you always want to use facts and evidence to support your points. So you don't want to say, I think maybe we should. You would want to say, based on this, I recommend this. So you want to be very confident when you're communicating. You also need to build a track record of results. So you have to have kind of that. We're going to talk about proof later, but you need to deliver on your commitments and consistently. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. You meet your deadlines. You produce high quality work. What's the saying? It's under promise and over deliver, right? That should be your mantra when you're thinking about results with your clients. Your actions should reinforce your reputation. Your actions are going to be your reputation. So authority grows when people know they can rely on you and that you are going to consistently execute for them. You're there for them. You're dependable. You're a solid rock. You're that foundation, right? That's what it takes. That's what they mean by results. It's not performance results. Performance is going to ebb and flow, and everybody deals with the same markets. That is not the results you're focused on. You're focused on, did you execute for your client's needs in an appropriate time? Were you proactive? Did you reach out? Are you keeping up with all of the requirements that are needed? Those are powerful results. And then the contribution. So sharing your knowledge, helping others. This concept of helping and giving comes up everywhere when you start doing more reading and personal growth and development and business excellence. Mentor somebody, answer questions, contribute. There's no better way to learn than to teach because you really have to know something inside and out in order for you to teach others. So if you could teach concepts and maybe even to your clients versus just telling them what to do, a little bit of education can go a long way. And when you're generous with your knowledge, it's going to also increase your authority because it's very common for insecure people to hold information, to hold knowledge. They think that that keeps them in power. All that does is closes off doors and it shuns people away. When you give freely of knowledge, people are like, wow, that's a wealth of information just flowing out of the person. They're attracted to you. So, some of the ways that you could start sharing your knowledge, and we're going to talk about content later, but writing and training and helping, right? So, there's lots of different platforms where you'll be able to do those things, and we're going to talk about that soon. So, if we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit now about your personal brand authority for content creation. Oh, actually, sorry. Go back one slide, Ava. Ava's helping me with the slides because I'm in Chicago and I'm flat screened here. So a little bit more on the authority first. So expertise, just to sum all of this up again, is know your subject. So have a plan to develop deeper knowledge. Have a plan to continue to grow in your field of expertise. You should always be learning. And then communication, explain it clearly, avoid jargon, use those facts, have conviction. Results, consistently deliver, do what you say you will do. And then contribute, help others succeed, share, give, receive. So now let's talk about building that content. All right, so what even is content, right? So content can come in a lot of different factors. And so on the left-hand side here, these are common channels that advisors use. We broke these down by tier. So where should you be focusing your energy and efforts? Tier one should be kind of the base table stakes. This is what you really need to have. You should have a website, you should have LinkedIn, and you should be doing a newsletter. You need to have a presence because people aren't going to hire you because of these things, but people are going to validate you with these things. As soon as they hear about you, they're going to Google you. Do you have any presence? They're going to check you out on the website and they're going to check you out on LinkedIn. So those are really those must-have pieces. The tier two is really your growth. So this is a lot of the video content and the webinars. And then tier three is scaling. How can you reach more people? And this is where some advisors will get into podcast or media or Instagram in different areas. So what is good content? Good content needs to be relevant. It needs to be credible, consumable, and valuable. So let's talk through a concept around how do you create your content. So everybody has limited time and you're at a different phase in your practice. So some of you are going to do all of this together yourself. And some of you are going to be at a position where you can actually outsource some of your content creation. The things that you should keep in-house would be your strategy, your planning, your subject matter expertise, what makes you, your brand, your voice, your message, and you always want to be the final reviewer and approver. But the things that you could start thinking about outsourcing, the actual writing and editing, right? Designing and visuals, which we also have ChatGTP, which can help, right? This content creation was actually created by ChatGTP. Video editing. Editing can be very time consuming if you're new and learning, and that is something that potentially could be outsourced. Search engine optimization and distribution support, right? So the posting and all the automations, all of those things could be outsourced. Let's talk about some of those tiers. Let's go a little bit deeper. So let's talk about your website. And with your website, that could also include a blog. This is going to help build your credibility and your visibility. So you want to make sure that on your website, you're adding things like educational articles or guides, anything that's downloadable resources. These could be potentially lead gen sources for you. If you are in a niche, then you want your website to highlight that and you want those people to think you are it. If I am a dentist, this is my advisor. They know everything about selling a practice. They know about my ebbs and flows of my business. They know it. I'm an influencer. They only work with influencers. I'm a chief of police. They know all the nuances of police, right? There's power in niche, which we talked about before, but your website needs to articulate that if that's you. Financial planning for physicians, retirement strategies for federal employees, right? Like we have so many advisors that have these really great little niche areas. Those should be prominent on your site if you have them. And the reason why you want to link a blog to your website is search engine optimization. Data and text is huge right now. All of these AI systems are scouring, looking for things. If you create a video, and we're going to talk about this in content later as we keep going through this, but a video could be repurposed and used. You could create then mini clips out of it. You could create a blog out of it. You could write little text blobs out of it. So that 1 hour of content creation on a video could turn into 20 different potential content pieces for you. And all of that is building credibility and it's going to help you come up in the search engines. Have you do Google searched yourself? Have you asked ChatGTP about yourself or who your main competitors are? It's a powerful tool, and then you'll know who's actually out there doing stuff. So let's talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably one of the highest returns on investment for most advisors. And it depends on how you're going to use it. And we've talked about LinkedIn when we were talking about centers of influence and when we were talking about referrals, but it's a great way to connect. You can find and target names. You can actually look for people that you are already connected with and then their second and ask for those introductions. But you can also use it to highlight and make it part of your brag board, right? So market insights and commentary, client success stories. Obviously, it has to be anonymized, right? You can't give any real names or information. Retirement and tax planning tips. That's general education only, so they're not breaking any rules and making sure that we're not providing actual advice. But any of these things, short videos, articles, why it matters, decision makers, right? Like all of these different type of short digestible content in LinkedIn, driving folks to your website or to your blog or to connect or to make introductions. But that is definitely an area that you can generate some additional resources. The email and the newsletter is going to help nurture your prospects and your clients. So monthly updates is obviously usually a component within it, and then adding some other relatable content. Make some of it fun, make some of it business, because all of your clients are going to have gravitate towards a little bit of a different area. But financial planning, checklists, little quizzes, behavioral finance insights, industry news, why it matters, did you know? All of those kinds of things. I mean, I've had some advisors that add in like games, like little word puzzles and things like that, or birthdays. One of our financial advisors actually in their newsletter publishes a list of all of the referrals. Thank you, Mary, for referring John. And it's not first and last name, it's just first. And they're like $5 gift card, Starbucks cards this month. And she said it makes the competition where the advisors are then, or the clients are then trying to get their name in the newsletter. So they're sending in referrals and then they see their name posted in the newsletter. So little things like that. All of those tie back to our last session about signature moments. Your newsletter should be your personal brand. You want to make sure that there's consistency in it. You want to make sure that you're providing value and that it's relevant. But what's your signature moment? What is uniquely you? Right? And if you're very matter of fact and you're very polished and professional and you're very serious and you're like, I would never post a game in my newsletter, that's fine. But you're going to have clients that are like you, so they're probably going to like the same newsletter you like. But if you are like, oh man, I love the idea of a puzzle, and maybe I'm going to even add in a birthday list, and I'm going to do a recipe of the month, and I'll ask my clients to send in their recipes, and then they might get featured and put in. Right? So you're going to have clients that are going to gravitate to these different things. They're going to look forward to these kinds of things. They're going to save them. They're going to share them. Newsletters are very powerful. If you are not doing a newsletter, it's definitely something that you need to do. Another of the content strategies was the videos. So this could be YouTube's, it could be short clips, it could just be little reels that you're doing on your social. So you want to have a voice, what to do when. You would want to have common myth busting content or common mistakes or why it matters or did you know. So you do have to walk a fine line between making sure that you're doing education and not advice, but sharing information on what you did do, sharing an example of helped a business owner understand and walk through. Da 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 da. If you find yourself in these shoes, like let's talk or connect. Not all people have all circumstances. So you have to make sure that you're doing things in a compliant way, but it's very powerful because people love video. They're listening more to videos and podcasts and streaming than they are reading, and you can connect with folks. You can also help with that visual, have them connect. Related to video and a little different would be your webinars and your events. Webinars and live events are great for lead gen and client education. So, client appreciation, client education, lead gen, you can ask your clients to invite their prospects or family or friends or who not to enjoy and be with them. A lot of topics around market volatility and what's happening in the markets, politics, say the union of what's going on. Those are really well attended. Retirement readiness, tax planning. We've got about 15 different general educational topics that are out there. Finances and kids, like all of those different topics. They're very interested. Your clients want to know. And if you're not providing it to them, where are they getting it from? And if their friend invites them to an event and it's not yours, you are opening the door for someone else to have a relationship. So it's not just about winning the new business for a seminar, right? We talked about seminars as a way to win new business. Yes, but what about as a way to maintain and service and keep or make your clients into walking billboards for you? Let them brag about you. Let them invite their friends to your events, and then they get this education that's so valuable, and then they want to take it to the next step. So a lot of power in just doing those kinds of events. And then the podcast. So, if you're really passionate about being a thought leader and you want to have episodes, if you're a good natural talker, if people listen to you, then podcasts could be for you. It can help deepen engagements, it can help with networking, and this content can be repurposed as well because the podcast can be transcribed, it can be turned into a blog, it can be turned into little short content. It's not for everybody, but it is definitely a tool for some. And then lastly would be the local media and PR. Well, actually, Instagram too is another version. But your local media would be getting on TV, trying to be an appearance on TV, newspaper, quotes, industry publications, community speaking engagements. Third-party credibility will carry so much more weight than your own self-promotion. When somebody puts you on a platform, puts you on stage, you instantly get that authority, right? So that is very powerful. And I'll tell you, Chamber of Commerce, I know a lot of advisors don't like the Chamber of Commerce, and I get it because the last thing you want to do is say I'm a financial advisor and insurance agent, and everyone runs from you like the plague, right? But when you say I'm a financial literacy coach. What is that? Well, I help groups of people understand their finances. I go into companies, I help educate their people, and I teach and I educate on these topics. And then all of a sudden they're down a speaker. Yeah, I can help out. Let me talk. And now all of a sudden you're speaking at the events and you're the person of authority and you're coming in. It is a great platform. And then Instagram is growing for our younger advisors. It's definitely a more buzzing platform. I would say TikTok would be in that category as well. Those would be like the behind the scenes and personal stories and life content and quick tips and financial tips. And so that is growing. But again, I think it's about knowing your audience and knowing what works for you. The most successful advisor brands out there, they are there because they are consistent, right? And so you have to make sure that you are consistently getting your message out and making sure that you know your branding so that you have that. But that content strategy is really important. Creating your map, right? So what are your ideas and how are you going to articulate that? Where are you going to go? And then determining, are you going to do this in-house? Are you going to outsource any it, right? Editing all of the videos and content can be time consuming. Even replicating your documents and repurposing them, right? All of those things can take time. So think about that power of potentially outsourcing and when you might reach the need to do that. Social media posts, graphics, and all of those different things that you would be able to do. So that is about content. Let's move on and let's talk now about proof. So the proof is really important because this is the validation, right? The challenge isn't just about creating your content, it's creating that proof. How do you get the proof? So there's really four types of proof. Your results proof, right? Like prove to me that you can actually do financial planning. How do you prove that to a prospect? Because we can't actually show them. Well, you can do it through a case study. You can anonymize it. You can take the personal names off, right? And then testimonials, right? You can have your clients that tell you, that give you those reviews and that give you the Google reviews and the star ratings and all of that. What about your expertise proof? How do you prove that you're actually an expert? Well, you do this through educational content, insights, framework, right? Like how are you positioning and how are you teaching and leading? The authority proof is best built through media, speaking, credentials, and awards. So those are very powerful things as well. And then your experience proof. So stories, lessons learned, years in practice. It is difficult to be a young financial advisor. I know when I was in my 20s, how many times people were like, have you ever done this before? Are you sure you know what you're doing? Is anybody helping you? Like I've heard it all. And I used to hate looking so young, and I knew one day I would like being younger looking. That day is finally coming around, thank goodness. But when we're talking about proof, you want to make sure that you're sharing those outcomes, right? So we talked about the proof. So instead of saying, I help business owners plan for retirement, you could say something like, I helped a business owner identify a succession gap that could have cost millions. Now it's like, what do you mean a succession gap? And it could have cost millions. I want to learn about that. I've worked with families to reduce estate tax exposure through strategic planning. I help executives evaluate concentrated stocks before retirement, right? So it's like, be very specific. What did you do? Not just general, because everyone is out there posting general. So be a little bit more specific, but still keep it vague enough that you're keeping confidentiality down. You need to make sure that you are really showing your expertise publicly. So if nobody knows that you do such a phenomenal job, you're not going to grow, right? You can't just be a rock star in the closet. I would say that I struggle with this for a long time, probably nearly a decade, where I would be locked up, head down, cranking out work, and then somebody else would get all of the glory and all of the publicity of the work that I was doing. It took me a long time to realize, oh, wait a second. I need to make sure that people know that this is what I'm doing, right? And so you've got to get comfortable with having that ability to self promote, and to have confidence in yourself, to go out publicly and let people know this is what you do. People trust when you can break down those complexities and that you're out there and you're sharing. You've got to create original content. Most advisors just repost other articles. And that's okay if you don't have time, but you should add your own note about the article or your comment about the article or your perspective, trends that you're seeing with clients. You don't even have to make it about finance and investing. You can make it about what I'm seeing affluent families do, what I'm seeing about the transfer of wealth between parents and the next gen, what I'm seeing about younger kids in investing, blind spots, lessons learned, right? Like in hundreds of planning conversations, this is the conversation that's never discussed, or this is what no one has heard about. Like, observe, right? Like, you have a natural niche, you have a natural market, so you need to tap into that. Your clientele have problems. And if you've gone through these exercises over the last 8 weeks, hopefully you've identified some of those folks. So you should be able to key in on what those are. Then you can replicate those best clients. You need to leverage third-party validations, right? So in asking for the Google reviews and the star ratings, a lot of advisors will say that they get leads from that. People are searching you up. People are looking. They're desperate to know. They're scared to pick a financial advisor. They don't know how to pick one. They don't know where to go. And so they're just kind of trusting, right? And a lot of times they will just go with the first one that talks to them. Sometimes they'll interview three, but what do they see when they look for you online? So if you can get yourself out there with third party validation, some ratings and things, but if you can work to get quoted in media, if you can work to ask to be a podcast appearance, if you can do these things and then you post those on your social of what you did, that's going to go a long way. Collecting and sharing testimonials where allowed, right? So you have to fall within your compliance, but those testimonials and feedback can be really powerful as well. And then, the showing your process. We talked about in a couple of sessions back that clients get uncomfortable not knowing what's happening. So you have a lot of like, this is what happens when I work with you. This is what you can expect. Here's our discovery process. Here's our methodology. Here's our investment philosophies. Here's our review process and the client experience. And then all of a sudden, people are like, wow, I can see what you're going to do for me. And then that builds that trust, right? And so there's proof in process. And process is repeatable. And when you start having that process and you start repeating it over and over, it's getting that fly trap going. And then you have that consistency, which also leads to that proof. So those are all of the components on the personal brand proof. So let's wrap all of this up together. I told you I would summarize some of the key words for you. So, and you can see where there's a lot of overlap. So your first impressions is visible, communication, and energy, right? Your authority, look at the overlap, is still around communication. And energy, arguably, could be a little bit of results in contribution, right? Invisibility, right? They're somewhat related, but let's look at content. Content, all of content is communication. And now these key words are you relevant, credible, consumable, and valuable? Well, that means you have to be visible. Your content has to be visible. Is it relevant? Is it valuable? Is it consumable? That kind of relates to the energy level. Like, is it interesting? And then the proof, there's the visibility again, result, and there's communication again. So you can see how there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of moving pieces. When you're missing just even one of the areas, things can kind of break and crack a little bit. But you wonder why is it that sometimes somebody can just all of a sudden be like this incredible personal brand and have all of this awareness, credibility, authority, content, like they have the whole package. I can guarantee you it's not by accident. Every overnight success has a 10 to 20 year grind in front of it. Promise you. So don't think about the end result as much as you think about progress over perfection. Get started. Your first step is going to be slower than your next step, and eventually you're going to be running before you know it. So you have to get started. So let's go on into our workbook exercises. So, on page 21, we've got our first couple of questions here. So we want to talk about your authority position. So what are you known for helping for? What, if you had to pick one thing that was your subject matter expertise, what is that? And is it in a particular niche? Do you only solve for a certain identified area? And what are the outcomes for that? So where would you say is your crowning jewel for authority? And maybe you have a couple of authority areas. So you might repeat exercise one if you think, hey, at best, this is where I am at the best, and then secondarily or third, right? So you can figure out that on your own. Exercise two is your content plan. Make a 90-day content plan. I want you to choose two channels: LinkedIn, email, video, speaking, newsletter. I would suggest newsletter and LinkedIn. They're the easiest, and they will help you get going. But what's your weekly cadence going to be? What kind of insight are you going to post about? What kind of story or case study are you going to post about? And what is something relational? So you want to have variety of your content. So Find Me Online, FMO is an online marketing organization. That was a free plug for them. They did not pay me for that. But what I was most impressed when I was reviewing them is their strategy that they build out and their calendar for advisors. And they talk about having to touch 5 key areas. So they're like, people want to hear about your culture and then their business and then like all these other areas. And I was like, wow, that is really cool. I hadn't seen those 5 areas before. I have to go back and look at that a little bit closer. But that's the idea here is in your content plan, you want diversity in that content, but still all related to your authority positions. And then on flip to the next page, on page 22, you have your third exercise. This is your social proof. So what assets do you need to build? Are you looking for testimonials, case studies, one pager, frequently asked questions, how we work together documents? So figure out what it is that you want to prioritize. You can check off what you want, or you could even order these by number if you want them all. And then what are going to be your top three proof points? Right? So what is the social proof? What do you want to prove to the world of who you are? What is it? And write those down. And then you need that 90-day content schedule, right? So how much are you going to commit to publishing each week? So those are all of your assignments. And that wraps it up. And on the last slide here, what we have on the next page is the QR code. So if you're not following Sequence Planning, go ahead and scan that QR code, sign up, follow us, get caught up on last sessions, and then our last session of Are You Ready to Double is going to be next week, and it's all about accountability and scale. So you don't want to miss it. Make sure that you tune in and sign on for the 23rd. All right, that is it for our content. So I'll open it up. If there are any Q&A, you're free to come off mute and have a quick chat if you want, or you can have the rest of your day off. All right, then. Hope everybody has a great rest of your week and hope we will see you next week for the very last session. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.